we have some of our staff from the Kauai Division of Forestry and Wildlife Forestry Program. We have Kalli Harshman, who's our watershed tech on Kauai, and Kagimoto, who is our invasive species technician. Today, they're joining us from the beautiful Kauai, and they will be talking about their newest detections up in Virapidohia death up in the Kokee region, and some of the lessons they learned and how they responded to this new discovery. And so with that, Kyle and Kalli, I made you folks co-hosts, so you should be able to share your screen and take it away.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, we'll just share our screen real quick.
There you go.
Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right. Hi, good morning. It's so nice to see some familiar names on here, and happy to meet everyone that's not familiar. I'm Kalli Harshman. I'm the watershed field technician with the Division of Forestry and Wildlife on Kauai, and I will be presenting with Kyle Kagimoto, my coworker, about our most recent detections of Ceratocystis leucohea up in our high priority native forest, and how we responded to that dreaded discovery.
All right, thanks, Kalli. Aloha, everybody. Yeah, thank you for joining us. So I'll start off just by giving a brief summary of ROD on Kauai, just how it's spread, at least from what we know through our sampling. So as you can see on the slide, ROD was first detected on the island in May of 2018, so almost 3 years ago. It was found out in that northeast corner, both Luku and Huliohia. So this map here is from October 2019. So you can see is kind of right off the bat, found in a few different places scattered around the island. This next map is kind of after we had increased our capacity here. So we hired a few more staff, got trained up, and ramped up our sampling. And so you can see that we found it kind of all throughout the east side. This map is from September of last year, so just a few months ago. And you can see that by this time, we had found it kind of scattered around, you could say roughly half the island. So pretty well spread throughout the east side and the north shore. But the key thing to note here is that we had not found it up in our higher elevation forest. So the Alakai Plateau in the center of the island here, in Kokee, it had been somewhat confined to a certain habitat type, what we would generally call low elevation, so up to about 1,500 feet, wet valleys with scattered ohia, a mix of native and non-native vegetation. And so we had, we were hopeful that ROD wouldn't be able to make the jump up into this colder, wetter, higher elevation forest. And that's how things kind of went for the first couple of years until December of last year. So we found ROD up in Kokee. There's a total of 6 trees up there now that we know of. What was already a bad year in 2020 became worse. It was basically the worst Christmas present that we could get. But so yeah, that was a really bad discovery, something that we were all kind of shocked and very sad to find out. So just to dig a little deeper into why this area is considered our highest priority, the Alakai Plateau or the Alakai Swamp, Kokee, these Nepali ridges on the northwest side of the island, they're by far the most pristine native forest on the island. For any of you guys who are familiar, you know that it's just a really special place. Being on the Alakai Plateau especially, it's like probably, you could easily say 90% native vegetation. That picture on the right is looking from the eastern Alakai back to Kokee. So a pretty good stretch of the plateau. It's a closed canopy native forest. You can see pretty much all of the dark green trees are ohia. The light green trees are olapa. It's home to many rare and endangered plants, birds, and insects. The Kokee area has a lot of really nice old growth mesic forests, huge trees, a lot of endangered species out there. And it's also really important for watershed. So as many of you guys know, it has really high rainfall. Mawa'alea'ale is considered one of the wettest places on earth with close to 400 inches of rain a year. Yeah, it's probably gotten like, I think about 50 inches in the past month. And so it's the source of most of the island's major streams and rivers. And so losing ohia in a place like this would be, catastrophic, both for native ecosystem function and for water capture.
All right, so we're gonna first talk about the situation up on Milili'i Ridge Road, which is on one of the western ridges west of the Alakai. We first observed this tree late November during the 3 days of flying for our digital mobile sketch mapping aerial surveys, in which we fly island-wide ohia habitat. You can see on the right, the bottom right picture, all of our flight lines from that day, from those 3 days. So we cover, yeah, pretty much most of the island, and this tree was discovered during those flights. So as you can see on the left picture, this is from that day. And we knew we had to get back on the ground. So we're kind of looking for on the ground places that we can get that are in high priority areas during those flights. So within the next 10 days from the survey, we were able to get on the ground and assess the situation. One of the first things we noticed is how big this tree is. It's one of the biggest trees we've sampled. It's 40 inches DBH and 60 feet tall. Another thing that was pretty obvious right from approaching the tree was how much ambrosia beetle frass was covering the surface. So a lot of inoculum is being pumped out from this tree. As you can see below the middle picture, after we had sampled the tree and sprayed the spectricide black paint, we went back and noticed that the ambrosia beetles are still present and creating new frass out of that sampled area. And we also took note on the fact that it's surrounded by a couple dozen endangered pet species, Psychotria hobdii plants. So we had the idea that this tree probably is not going to be fellable, which is our go-to management technique. But we were still hopeful that we would be able to get this tree on the ground. So we brought in an expert feller and our botanist to assess the area, and they confirmed that, yeah, it's surrounded by ohia and the PEP species, so it's not a tree that we're going to be able to fell. So we knew we had to get creative. So on January 6th, we called in all of our network on Hawaii Island, as well as our partners in crime, KISC, to discuss the actions that some novel actions that we could take in addressing this problem. Thank you so much to Mark Hughes, who kind of really developed the management plan that we've been following step by step. So one of the first things that we did, we sent our coworkers, Matt Davis and Bregan Klein, to create a deer mesh barrier around the tree. We did notice how much ungulate activity and hunting activity was happening in this area. So this deer mesh barrier is basically just to keep the hooves and the feet away from the area that's most likely to have the inoculum in the soil. Another thing that came from that meeting was discussing installing these yellow insect traps just to assess the population of ambrosia beetles in the area and what species of ambrosia beetles might be coming to the tree. Another thing that was discussed in this meeting was this double-sided insect sticky roll, which, as you can see, covers about 7 feet of the 60-foot tall tree. So the idea with this is that it's going to trap any of the ambrosia beetles that are coming to the tree and any of the ambrosia beetles that are coming out of the tree. It's a really great idea and could work in different circumstances and be much more effective in different circumstances for a tree that has a smaller diameter or that's more accessible to get a ladder down to it. So this tree is on a road. It's about 50 meters from the road, but the road is not that well traveled for good reason. It's super rugged, and during rainy times, it's nearly undrivable. We've already had one of our trucks kind of break down from trying to navigate this road. So we end up hiking about 1.5 miles each way to get to this tree. So if we were able to get a ladder down to the tree, or if the tree was a smaller diameter, this would be a really good new management technique that came out of the January 6th meeting. So just to go over the timeline for responding to this scenario, you can see it's pretty condensed, especially for being around the holidays. It was first observed November 30th and sampled on December 10th when the first drone plot was flown, which we are flying a monitoring plot around the tree to make sure that there aren't any other rob suspects popping up in the area. We received the results that it was indeed a Lukua ohia tree on the 16th of December and was assessed by our expert Class C feller and our DOFA botanist on the 21st, and we continued to fly the drone plot. Then the meeting with the rod managers took place on the 6th, and we were able to get the deer mesh and the rod sign installed on the next day. We will continue to be flying this drone plot just to monitor the area and act as quickly as we can if something does pop up near the tree. And you can see that there is a slight gap between installing the sticky insect trap roll and the meeting, because we have been waiting for the go-ahead from the HDOA to apply 2 pesticides, verbenone and bifenthrin. That is kind of leads to the next steps for responding to this situation. We're lucky enough that our coworker Ray over at KISC was working on getting his Class 10 pesticide applicator's license, which he has now, which you need in order to apply these pesticides. And the application is in the process of getting to the HDOA and hopefully will be fast-tracked so we can follow through with these next steps. Additionally, we will continue to be just scouting the area, and we are hoping to do soil sampling near the tree and on the road just to assess if there is ceratocystis near the tree or on the road, and how we can take efforts to install more boot brushes or signage, or what steps we need to take to have the public be involved in the process of sanitation and decon. Turn it over to Kyle.
Okay, so our second of 2 case studies we're going to talk about is these 4 luku trees that were found at Ka'ahole Valley, really close to Ku'ianar, about 1 mile away from the Miloli'i tree that Kalli just talked about. So that's one of the trees you can see from the air, found on the same DMSM flight as the Miloli'i tree. So cool shot, you can see how it really stands out amongst the other trees. One thing that makes these trees different is that they're helicopter access. It is possible to hike to them, but it's going to involve a lot of bushwhacking, tough day, and that's all a lot of the trees on Kauai are. There's very few that you can drive or hike up to. So the vast majority are out in these remote areas, no infrastructure around. A lot of the Kauai's native forest is in the center of the island. And so for the vast majority of the trees, the only access is to fly to them. So you can see the little helicopter there. It was actually a pretty rough landing at that spot. And so the pilot was having to drop off, of the 3 passengers, he would drop off one at a different site to lighten the load for him to actually land. And then he'd come back and pick up that other passenger. So we did a pretty big operation. We flew in 9 passengers and a sling load, with all of the chainsaw, fuel, PPE. So this is the first tree. You can see it's a medium-sized tree. We felled this one. Everything went well. You can see the picture in the bottom right has a really nice shot of the staining, all of the black staining on the outer edge of the tree trunk. This is the second tree that we felled. So the pictures, you can tell, especially from that picture on the right, but it still doesn't quite do it justice just how big this tree was. And a lot of the trees in this area are of this size. They survived the past 2 hurricanes, probably many more hurricanes, huge trees. You can see this is, kind of a typical day for people doing rod management, maybe not with a tree this big, but you're out there felling trees, and every tree is different. It's not always easy. You can see this is our Class C expert feller. He's standing on a ladder on the right. They had to use a whole bunch of wedges. It's a really fun, exciting part of the job. It's cutting these trees down, but it's also pretty intense and sometimes scary. But fortunately, everything went well with this tree coming down. That's the trophy shot on the left. You can see that picture on the right. That's a 20-inch bar. So not a huge saw, but decent sized saw. And that picture is kind of angled from the right. So it's a little skewed, but that tree trunk is well bigger than that, twice the size of that 20-inch bar. And again, you can see in that picture on the right, it's kind of sad to see, but like you can see all the staining that goes along, the vascular system of the tree there. So these 2 trees were felled basically on top of each other. Fortunately, there just happened to be a clearing kind of right in the middle of them. And then we covered that with this 3mm black plastic sheeting from Home Depot. We haven't done a whole lot of tarping here on Kauai, but we do it when we can, and especially in a situation like this, in this really high priority forest. So, basically, I'm sure you guys are familiar, but the idea with the tarping is just cover the trees, keep whatever frass and beetles inside of the tarp. And in an area like this, that's mesic forest, typically pretty dry and hot, at least compared to other areas, the tree will dry out faster and the fungus will die quicker, and the tree will be less attractive to beetles. So yeah, it's a lot of tarp out there, but yeah, huge tree. So we covered that, put up a sign. And then these are the 2 other trees. So these trees were not fellable. Just you can see that there's other ohia right next to them. So we did that double-sided insect sticky roll around them as high up as we could. And as far as the timeline, the tree was found on the same day as the Milali'i tree, or trees were found on the same day. You can see there's a little gap between when they were found and when we were able to get on the ground and sample them. that was because of it's the holidays, everybody's taking off from work, and scheduling, with the helicopter company, is we gotta also work around their schedule. We got the results from Dr. Keith's lab that 4 of the 4 trees had leukoahia, and then you can see on February 9th, we went back and did management on them. So a little bit of a delay between first seeing the tree and actually getting out there to do management work, but that's just part of as we all know, I mean, the scheduling can be tough. And next steps, similar to the Melaleuca tree, hopefully we can use the bifenthrin and verbenone. We would like to put up an animal barrier around the trees, and but everything does kind of come down to, especially with the having to use helicopters, to money, and being able to fly out there. So hopefully we can tie everything in together where we can do the bifenthrin, verbenone, and the animal barrier all on the same trip.
So after all of this, the dreaded discovery of having to respond to rapid ohia death up in the precious, precious native forest, our takeaways ended up being that rod never rests, so we shouldn't either. I noticed in myself a bit of complacency when it was only showing up in more weedy areas in forest that was already kind of stressed by invasives. But we just got to stay on our toes. Yep.
Yes. Second takeaway is plan ahead. Don't wait for something to happen. While we were all very hopeful that rod wouldn't make it up to Alki Plateau, Koke, it probably didn't take a psychic to predict that, we could very well face the situation of finding a rod tree or trees up there that were not fellable. So, in hindsight, we probably should have been a little bit more prepared with a plan in case that did happen.
And that being said, the urgency that we did have to face kind of allowed for, a quick collaborative effort, and it showed us how many people are really there waiting to support us over on Hawaii Island and statewide. We have a really amazing statewide rod group that we were really quickly able to create these new solutions to situations that didn't fit into the management box that we had kind of hadn't left before.
Next takeaway is just, now that we have this plan, we can evolve it and also share it. So, knock on wood, of course, hopefully other people will not face a similar situation, but the reality is that, people probably will. And so at least if we can be proactive about it, we can share this with other rod managers. They can, change it to fit their specific situation, but at least they have this plan in hand.
And this one's kind of minor, but it is changing the way we're doing our digital mobile sketch mapping. We don't want to schedule it near the holidays again, which also coincides with the wettest part of the year, because it does direct our on-the-ground management. We are changing the time of year that we schedule the aerial surveys. So.
And with that, we just want to say mahalo. Especially to our partners at KISK. They do everything with us. And definitely co-leads on all of our rod work here in Kauai. So thank you very much to them. And thank you to all the people listed there on the right. I see Rob on the call. I think Brian Tucker as well. Thank you, Brian, for making all the maps that were in this presentation. Thank you to Dr. Keith and her lab for always processing our samples in a very timely manner, and of course to Mark for coming up with the plan and really doing a lot of the legwork on that. So thank you everybody. That's our emails, of course, on the bottom. If anybody wants to contact us anytime in the future, please feel free to. And if there's any questions that you guys have now, we're more than happy to take them.
Great. Mahalo, Kyle and Kalli. You guys did awesome. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put that up in the chat box. One question I did have was, are you guys doing your DSMS, your dim sum surveys just 2 times a year, or is that going to change now that you guys have a, rod that you found rod in your priority areas? Are you guys going to be flying more often now in those priority areas?
So we will continue doing the island-wide DMSM flights twice a year, but we have quarterly surveys scheduled for the higher priority native forest, the Alakai, and the Kokee area as well. So every 4 months. 3 months.
3 months.
3 months, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I think maybe Kim, do you want to chime in now? Do you have a note?
So sure. I can, thanks Kyle and Kalli for that great update. We were, in communication with DOFA the whole time, and also from an outreach standpoint, just wanted to share that when the first detection was noted of the first tree right before Christmas, we rushed out and working with DOFA and DLNR to get a press release out about that one. So the first one has gone out. Now we're waiting for our next press release and outreach communications that will take place once we get those HDOA permits in that Kyle and Kalli mentioned. So we're targeting the 1st of April that we're going to do kind of a second round of outreach about the additional trees that have been discovered in Kokee. And we're really wanting to be able to go out with a message that says, hey, yeah, these discoveries, yeah, hey, a bummer, we're really concerned about it, but here's what we're going to do about it. So, the steps so that it shows to the community how involved we are and how we're responding to it. So we're just waiting for those HDOA permits to get approved. That's taken a little bit of time because this is an unusual situation, and we've applied for it, as I understand, as a research permit. So this is not treatment, that would be ongoing. It is these trees will be participating in a research study. So that will be forthcoming.
Great. And I guess with that note, since we actually only came out with the press release for the first tree, do you want this group to hold back on mentioning the 6 trees for now and just kind of saying rod, if they mention anything that rod has just been detected in Kokee, or is it?
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Is it okay for people to say all 6 of them or something? I don't want to jump the gun on it before the next press release comes out.
Well, you know how the coconut wireless works, especially in the conservation community. So clearly a lot of people in the conservation community are aware of it. And if I get asked by the public, I answer it, let's wait till we get maybe news stories about it to share. But within this group, it's fine to share and talk about. But with the public, we have not made a formal announcement. Not for any particular reason apart from we're just waiting to get more information to where we can say, hey, this is what's happened and here's what we're doing about it. And, it's pretty novel, right? The steps and the efforts that Kalli and Kyle and team are taking right now. So it's a pretty good message to take out. So hopefully we'll have that soon. And I've been targeting early April. So hopefully that will happen, which is what? Next week.
Next week.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you. So if no one has any other questions,